Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. So there's been another development or an update in the Rust case, and once again, I'm disappointed in the behavior of the prosecution. So what happened is that Alec Baldwin's team brought a motion to disqualify the special prosecutor. And disqualifying the prosecutor doesn't mean that the case ends. It's not a win. It just means that that prosecutor is kicked off the case. They'll have to find a new one, but they can still proceed with the case. So why would they do this? Well, the basis for it is that that special prosecutor was elected to the New Mexico House of Representatives. And the New Mexico Constitution notes that a person who is a sitting member of the legislature may not exercise any powers properly belonging to the executive or the judicial branch. So it's really a division of powers kind of issue. And they went and they wrote in their motion, they said, a prosecutor who also serves as a legislator could face pressure to make prosecutorial decisions that serve her legislative interests, such as by prosecuting a prominent defendant associated with an opposing faction within the legislature, even in the face of conflicting evidence or law. You can see what they're suggesting, right? This is a political prosecution. You are a politician. That's the angle that they're trying to make here. That's partially, a potentially sound argument in the sense of you may not want somebody who has some ulterior purpose in pursuing a prosecution, but also it's good PR. I mean, I will give it to these lawyers. That is excellent PR moves. And, I can't say, I haven't looked at the litigation on this in the past. Like, I haven't looked at whether this issue's been argued before, but it seems like a pretty credible argument based on things. And so the prosecution initially basically said, no, that's, that makes no sense. And then they changed their mind and they said, okay, well, we're going to have the special prosecutor step down. And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, we're going to get a new prosecutor for this. And that's a perfectly reasonable response. They might say something along the lines of, we don't know what the law is here. We don't want it to become an appellate issue. But instead, they put out a statement that I think is offside. Keep in mind that the prosecutor here should be doing their best to be coming off as sort of a neutral, person who's just applying the law, not sort of an interested party in the sense of having a personal stake in it. Because remember, that was exactly the allegation that Alec Baldwin's team is making. You're doing this for political reasons. There's a political motivation. And so you want to stay well away from that, right? And also that's just part of good prosecutorial ethics, is to kind of shy away from that. But instead, they made a statement here, and I'll just read some of the statement. After much reflection, I've made the difficult decision to step down as special prosecutor in the Rust case. My priority in this case, and in every case I've prosecuted in my 25-year career, has been justice for the victim. However, it has become clear that the best way I can ensure justice is served in this case is to step down so that the prosecution can focus on the evidence and the facts, which clearly show a complete disregard for basic safety protocols led to the death of Helena Hutchins. Now, they know this one's going to be a jury trial and that it's already going to be hard to find a jury. Maybe hold off on making these grand statements that might poison the jury pool. It's one thing for the defense to, do this, although it does get to be improper if the defense is doing too much litigating in the sort of public eye. But the prosecution should really be above that. And especially when there's this suggestion that, hey, you're just doing this as electioneering, maybe lay off the things that could be seen as electioneering. This is twice now that the prosecution, by making sort of overly grand statements and at the same time as they concede a legal issue, this is twice that they've done that. Don't make me support Alec Baldwin on this one. I don't think that his case is, I don't think that his argument holds water. I think that the prosecution, from what the prosecution has said, seems to have a case that should win. That doesn't mean that they necessarily will. I think that they have some real hurdles on that, but I think that they should, properly. But why are they behaving in a way that I'm having to come out and defend Baldwin? I mean, previously they brought, that sentence enhancement, and Alec Baldwin's position in trying to have that struck was exactly correct. It was 100% right in law. And instead, they're saying, oh, it's a distraction. We're going to agree to this because it's a distraction. Now, again, they're saying, oh, it's a distraction. Well, you know, if it's just a distraction, maybe, maybe don't agree if that, if you don't agree with it, then don't agree. But it seems here that they're agreeing to these things because they're correct in law. I suspect that they sat down and sort of evaluated things and went, huh, this is potentially a real issue here, and this is a matter of real concern. We got to take this seriously. He could win on this issue. And more importantly, he might be able to use this on appeal. There's all sorts of ways that they could have made this statement that wouldn't have me upset and annoyed. They could have, for instance, said, Mr. Baldwin has brought this application. We don't agree with his assessment of the law on this point. Nevertheless, we are going to appoint a new prosecutor, and we don't want to make this a side issue. We want this case to be heard on its merits and not on procedural aspects, and we don't want to open up a new issue to be heard on appeals. That might be fine, because then you're just saying we want to argue this case on its merits. You're not making these statements about, his guilt in a public forum, which hasn't been determined yet. Until he's convicted, assuming he's convicted, that's a big if at this stage, until and unless that happens, he's presumed innocent. That's a constitutional right in both Canada and the US. And so prosecutors should respect that. Just a thought. Anyway, this is a small update. I don't think it's going to be a major development in the sense that I expect that they'll probably either appoint a new special prosecutor, or they might say, you know what, the sentence we can get on this is sufficiently low that now we're going to go and, proceed with a regular prosecutor, somebody just from the regular office. The other problem that I see with this is that they're really tying themselves down here, because let's look at just how bad this looks for that special prosecutor who's just said, I believe absolutely, that he should be found guilty, basically. Whereas he's saying, hey, the prosecutor is acting on political, there's potentially political motivations. You know how bad it looks for that prosecutor now if a new prosecutor comes on this file and says, I don't think we got the case, we're going to drop it. Or we're going to make a deal that, that works this out. At that point, that new prosecutor is going to be in the situation of if they decide that they don't want to proceed with this, it's going to look like throwing that special prosecutor all the way under the bus. And the person whose fault that would be is the special prosecutor. You really don't want to set up your career where you are essentially pointing a gun like this at your own head. That was a really bad metaphor for this, but it is what it is. You already know from this case how badly that can go. Metaphorically speaking here, she's really inviting her own downfall, or at least inviting bad consequences. So, yeah. You know what? I'm going to leave that in. I'm not going to edit it out. We'll just live with it. So thank you for watching this far. Please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to see more content. I also want to thank my Patreon supporters at the $50 level, the CCFR, David Michaud, and Canada's National Farms Association, as well as the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited and Jane Babe and Luxor. And at the $20 level, Lindsay Metcalf, Kyle Fox, Haywire, Gerald to the Bailey, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, and Vicky. There's a link to the Patreon below if you want to join that. I'm also on Locals and various other places. Yeah, this is kind of an interesting issue, and we'll see how this one develops. I really don't like what I've been seeing. This is one that, in my view, the prosecution should be proceeding with the utmost care, to be seen to be above the fray, to be proceeding only on the basis of legal issues and not for popularity. And I'm concerned about how this is going, so we'll see. This also affects how I look at the case, because I've been relying a lot on documents that the prosecution has put out. their reasons for laying charges and so forth. And if I can't trust them, then that is going to cause me to look at their claims with a bit more skepticism. So we'll see. I'm going to keep following this one. Stay tuned. But for now, thank you for joining me. See you next time.